Jake Martinez stepped off the transport ship and felt the cold air hit his face like a slap. The frozen moon of Keth 7 stretched out before him, covered in white ice as far as he could see. Above him, the massive dome of Zenith Academy rose into the purple sky like a crystal mountain. He pulled his jacket tighter and walked toward the entrance. Other students moved around him, but they looked nothing like humans. Some were tall and thin with skin that looked like broken glass. Others had forearms and muscles that bulged under thick fur. A few glowed with soft blue light from machines attached to their bodies. Jake felt very small and very alone. The academy doors opened with a soft hiss. Inside, the building was warm and bright. Students filled the hallways, talking in languages that sounded like music or growling or electronic beeps. Jake followed the signs to the registration desk, trying not to stare at the strange beings around him. A creature with silver skin and no hair sat behind the desk. It had large black eyes that seemed to look right through Jake. When it spoke, its voice sounded like wind chimes. "You must be the human," it said. "Jake Martinez from Earth. I am Administrator Zelthus. Welcome to Zenith Academy." Jake nodded. "Thank you. I'm excited to be here." The administrator made a sound that might have been laughter. "We shall see how long that excitement lasts. Here is your room assignment and class schedule. Orientation begins in 1 hour." Jake took the papers and found his way to the dormitory. His room was small but comfortable, with a window that looked out over the ice fields. He unpacked his few belongings and changed into warmer clothes. Earth seemed very far away. The orientation hall was huge, with seats arranged in circles around a raised platform. Jake found an empty seat and looked around. He counted students from at least 10 different species. Most ignored him, but a few stared with what looked like curiosity or amusement. A tall figure walked onto the platform. It looked almost human but stretched out, like someone had pulled a person taller without making them wider. Its skin was pale blue and seemed to glow from within. When it spoke, its voice filled the entire hall without seeming loud. "I am Professor Kextai," it said. "I have taught at this academy for 300 years. You are here because you represent the best and brightest of your species. You will be challenged in ways you cannot imagine." The professor's eyes moved across the crowd and stopped on Jake for a moment. Jake felt like those ancient eyes could see everything about him. "This semester you will face the frozen labyrinth of trials," Professor Kextai continued. "It is a test that has been used for over 1,000 years. Many students do not complete it. Some require rescue. A few have died." Nervous sounds came from around the hall. Jake felt his stomach tighten. "The labyrinth is a maze of ice and metal," the professor explained. "It covers 5 square kilometers and reaches 30 meters high. The temperature inside drops to -40 degrees. The walls move and change. Ice storms can blind you. You must reach the center and retrieve a beacon within 4 hours." A student with forearms and gray fur raised one hand. "Professor, what equipment are we allowed to use?" "Anything you can design and build," came the reply. "But remember, you must carry it with you through the entire maze. Heavy equipment will slow you down. Complex machines may fail in the cold." Jake looked around at his fellow students. They were already whispering to each other, forming groups, making plans. The tall, glass-skinned ones talked about energy fields. The four-armed warriors discussed heating suits. The glowing technology students mentioned environmental controls. Nobody talked to Jake. After orientation, Jake walked through the academy halls. The building was like a small city, with laboratories, libraries, workshops, and recreational areas. He found the cafeteria and got dinner. The food was strange but edible. He sat alone at a small table, watching the other students. They moved, in groups of their own species, talking excitedly about the upcoming challenge. Jake ate his meal and listened to conversations in languages he didn't understand. "You're the human." Jake looked up. A girl about his age stood next to his table. She had dark hair and Asian features, and she looked as out of place as he felt. "I'm Lisa Chen," she said. "From California. Mind if I sit?" "Please," Jake said, grateful for someone to talk to. I was starting to think I was the only human here. Lisa sat down with her tray. There are only 3 of us in the entire exchange program. The third one is studying on a different moon, so it's just you and me for this challenge. They talked for an hour about Earth, their homes, and why they had come to Zenith Academy. Lisa was studying xenobiology. Jake was in the engineering program. Both had volunteered for the exchange to learn about alien technology and cultures. "What do you think about this ice maze thing?" Lisa asked. Jake shrugged. "Sounds dangerous, but I grew up in Minnesota. Cold doesn't bother me much." "The other students are already planning their equipment," Lisa said. "I heard the Graxon team talking about heating suits that weigh 200 pounds each. The Veltari want to use some kind of crystal energy field." "What are you planning?" Jake asked. "I don't know yet." "What about you?" Jake looked out the window at the ice fields. In the distance, he could see the outline of the labyrinth, dark against the white ground. "I think I need to understand the challenge better before I make any plans." That night, Jake lay in his narrow bed and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow, classes would begin. In a few weeks, he would face a test that had defeated students from advanced civilizations across the galaxy. He was just a human from Earth, a planet most of the galaxy considered primitive. But as he drifted off to sleep, Jake remembered skating on the frozen lakes of Minnesota, the feeling of gliding across smooth ice with perfect balance and control. Maybe being human wasn't such a disadvantage after all. The next 3 weeks at Zenith Academy passed quickly for Jake. His classes were harder than anything he had faced on Earth, but he found the alien technology fascinating. His professors seemed surprised when he understood concepts that other species found difficult. Every day after classes, Jake watched his fellow students prepare for the Ice Maze Challenge. The Academy's workshops buzzed with activity as teams built equipment and tested designs. The Graxon students, Colthex and Morgan, worked on massive heating suits in the engineering lab. Jake watched them weld thick metal plates together and install small fusion reactors. The suits looked like walking tanks. "Each suit weighs 300 pounds, Colthex explained to a group of watching students. "But they can keep us warm in temperatures down to minus 60 degrees. We will smash through the ice walls if we need to." The other students nodded with approval. The Graxon were known throughout the galaxy as excellent warriors and builders. In the physics lab, the Veltari twins Silandra and Nelvera created something completely different. They grew crystals in special chambers, each one glowing with soft light. When they held the crystals, the air around them became warm. "Our people have used crystal resonance for thousands of years," Silandra said to her sister. "These will create a heat field around our bodies. We won't need heavy suits." Jake thought the crystals were beautiful, but he wondered what would happen if they broke in the maze. The most impressive work came from Vexton, a Zephyrian student whose body was half machine. He built a suit that looked like it belonged on a spaceship. It had climate control, navigation systems, and emergency beacons. "My suit can map the maze as I move through it," Vexton told anyone who would listen. His voice came through electronic speakers. "It will find the shortest path to the center and warn me of dangers." Lisa spent her time in the workshops too, trying to design equipment like the other students. She asked Jake to help her several times, but he always said he was busy with other things. "What are you working on?" she asked him one evening over dinner. "The challenge is only 2 weeks away." "I'm still learning about the maze," Jake said. "I want to understand it better." Lisa looked frustrated. "Jake, everyone else has teams and equipment. We need to start building something or we're going to fail." But Jake had been spending his time somewhere else entirely. He had discovered the Academy's recreational facilities on the 3rd level. Most students ignored this area, but Jake found something that made his heart race with excitement. Hidden in the back of the recreation center was an old ice skating rink. It wasn't used much, only by a few faculty members from cold worlds who enjoyed the exercise. The ice was smooth and perfect, better than any rink Jake had seen on Earth. The first time he stepped onto the ice, Jake felt like he was home. He had brought his skates from Earth, old hockey skates his father had given him years ago. As soon as his blades touched the ice, muscle memory took over. Jake pushed off and glided across the rink. The cold air felt good on his face. He picked up speed, turning in smooth curves, stopping with sprays of ice chips. For the first time since arriving at the academy, he felt confident and strong. Every day after classes, Jake returned to the rink. He practiced for hours, relearning skills from his childhood in Minnesota. He worked on his balance, his turns, his ability to move quickly across the ice. His muscles remembered what his mind had almost forgotten. Other students sometimes watched him through the windows. They didn't understand what he was doing. To them, it looked like he was playing instead of preparing for a serious challenge. "The human is wasting his time," Jake heard Morgan say to his partner. "He should be building equipment like everyone else." "Humans are not very smart," another student replied. "They will probably need rescue in the first hour." Jake ignored the comments and kept practicing. He began to modify his skates in the workshop, making small changes to improve their performance on different types of ice. He studied the construction of the labyrinth through the academy's viewing windows, noting how the walls were built and how light reflected off the surfaces. The ice in the maze was not smooth like a skating rink. It was rough and uneven, with patches of snow and areas where wind had carved strange patterns. But Jake had grown up skating on frozen lakes and ponds that were just as rough. He knew how to read ice, how to find the best path, how to use the surface to his advantage. Professor Kexthai noticed Jake's activities. The ancient teacher sometimes stood at the viewing windows, watching the human glide across the ice with fluid grace. Other faculty members made jokes about the primitive human wasting time on children's games, but Professor Kexthai said nothing. 2 weeks before the challenge, the academy held equipment inspections. Students demonstrated their inventions and explained their strategies. The Graxon suits impressed everyone with their power and durability. The Veltari crystals created beautiful fields of warmth. Vexton's technological suit could probably survive in space. When Jake's turn came, he showed up with a simple backpack, containing basic cold weather gear and his modified ice skates. "Where is your heating system?" asked Professor Morthak, a Graxon instructor. "I don't need one," Jake replied. "How will you navigate the maze?" asked Dr. Veles, a Veltari scientist. "I'll find my way." The instructors looked at each other with concern. Some shook their heads. A few made notes that probably recommended Jake withdraw from the challenge. That night, Lisa cornered Jake in their dormitory hallway. "Are you insane?" she demanded. "Everyone thinks you're going to die in there. The instructors are taking bets on how long you'll last. Most think less than 10 minutes. Jake looked at his friend. "Lisa, do you trust me?" "Of course, but then trust me on this. I know what I'm doing." Lisa stared at him for a long moment. "I hope you're right. Because if you're wrong, I'll never forgive you for making me worry this much." Jake smiled. "I won't let you down." As the days counted down to the challenge, the excitement in the academy grew. Students made final adjustments to their equipment. Faculty prepared monitoring systems and rescue teams. Everyone expected to see either spectacular success or dramatic failure. Jake spent his last evening before the challenge alone on the ice, rink, skating in the quiet darkness. Tomorrow, he would find out if a lifetime of winter sports could compete with advanced alien technology. He glided across the ice one more time, feeling the familiar joy of perfect balance and speed. Tomorrow would change everything. The morning of the trial arrived with howling wind and falling snow. Jake woke early and looked out his window at the frozen labyrinth of trials. The massive structure looked even more dangerous in the storm, its ice walls gleaming like sharp teeth in the gray light. In the dining hall, students ate breakfast in nervous silence. The Graxon team checked their heating suits one more time. The Veltari twins held their glowing crystals close to their chests. Vexton ran diagnostics on his technological armor. Jake ate a simple meal of bread and fruit. He wore basic cold weather clothes and carried his small backpack. His ice skates hung from his belt, looking almost like toys compared to the massive equipment around him. "You still have time to change your mind," Lisa whispered to him. "I could share my heating gear with you." Jake shook his head. "I'm ready." Lisa had decided to use standard winter clothing with small heating packs, similar to what human mountain climbers used. It wasn't as advanced as the alien technology, but it was lighter and more reliable. At 9 in the morning, all the students gathered at the entrance to the labyrinth. Professor Kexthai stood before the massive doors, his blue skin glowing brighter in the cold air. "The rules are simple," he announced. "You have 4 hours to reach the center and retrieve the beacon. Emergency beacons will teleport you to safety if you activate them, but you will fail the challenge. The maze is monitored, but rescue teams cannot enter unless you are unconscious or dying." The professor's ancient eyes moved across the group. "The temperature inside is -40 degrees. The walls may shift without warning. Ice storms can reduce visibility to 0. Some of you will not complete this trial. Do not let pride kill you." The doors opened with a grinding sound. Cold air rushed out so bitter it made Jake's eyes water. Beyond the entrance, corridors of ice stretched into darkness. "You may begin." The Graxon team entered first, their massive suits clanking with each step. They moved slowly but steadily, their fusion reactors humming with power. The other students followed in groups, staying close together for safety. Jake waited until most of the others had entered. Then he sat down and pulled on his ice skates, checking the laces twice. Lisa watched him with worried eyes. "Be careful," she said. "You too. See you at the center." Jake stepped into the labyrinth and immediately felt the brutal cold. But unlike the shock it gave the other students, the cold felt familiar to him. It reminded him of winter mornings in Minnesota, skating on the lake before school. The floor of the maze was solid ice, just as he had hoped. The walls rose high above his head, covered in frost and icicles. Jake pushed off with one foot and began to glide forward. The difference was immediate and dramatic. While other students struggled to walk on the slippery surface, Jake moved like he was born on ice. His skates found purchase where boots would slip. He turned corners smoothly, using the walls to guide his momentum. In the monitoring room, faculty members watched screens that showed each student's progress. Gasps of surprise came from the observers as they saw Jake's movement. "How is he doing that?" asked Dr. Velius. Professor Kexthai leaned forward, studying the screens with intense interest. "Fascinating." Jake encountered his first real challenge, 10 minutes into the maze. A corridor led to a dead end, forcing him to backtrack. But instead of struggling to turn around like the other students, he simply pushed off the wall and glided backward, skating in reverse until he reached the previous junction. The Graxon team was having problems. Their heavy suits made them slow and clumsy on the ice. Morgan slipped and fell, and it took both partners several minutes to get him back on his feet. Their heating systems worked perfectly, but they were falling behind. The Veltari twins moved more gracefully, but their crystal energy fields had an unexpected problem. The warmth they generated created fog in the cold air, making it hard to see where they were going. They had to slow down and feel their way along the walls. Vexton's suit was working well until he reached a narrow passage. His bulky armor was too wide to fit through. He had to backtrack and find another route, losing precious time. Jake faced the same narrow passage 20 minutes later. He turned sideways and skated through it easily, using his arms to balance against the walls. What had stopped Vexton completely was just another turn for Jake. The maze began to show its true difficulty as the students went deeper. The temperature dropped even more. Ice storms started without warning, filling corridors with blinding snow and cutting wind. The walls began to shift, changing the layout of passages. Jake found himself in the middle of an ice storm that reduced visibility to just a few feet. Other students would have had to stop and wait, but Jake had experience with blizzards. He used his other senses, feeling the air currents and listening for echoes off the walls. He skated slowly but steadily through the storm, navigating by instinct and experience. The monitoring screens in the faculty room showed chaos. Students were lost, confused, and struggling with equipment failures. Several had already activated their emergency beacons and been teleported to safety, but one screen showed something impossible. Jake was not just surviving the maze. He was thriving in it. He moved through passages that challenged the other students. He used the ice storms to his advantage, letting the wind push him when it blew in the right direction. When walls shifted and changed the maze, he adapted instantly. "This is unprecedented," Professor Kexthai said quietly. "In 300 years of teaching, I have never seen anything like this." Jake reached what appeared to be an impossible obstacle, a corridor filled with razor-sharp icicles hanging from the ceiling. They were too low to walk under and too sharp to push through. Other students would need tools or weapons to clear the path. Jake studied the icicles for a moment, then dropped into a low crouch and skated underneath them. His years of hockey had taught him to stay low and move fast. He glided through the dangerous passage like water flowing through a pipe. 1 hour into the challenge, Jake was ahead of every other student. He had covered more ground, solved more puzzles, and overcome more obstacles than teams with millions of dollars worth of equipment. But the maze was not finished with him yet. As he turned a corner, Jake saw something that made him smile. A long, straight corridor stretched ahead of him, its ice floor smooth and perfect. It looked like a frozen highway leading toward the center of the labyrinth. Jake pushed off hard and began to pick up speed. Wind rushed past his face as he skated faster than he had ever moved in the maze. For a moment, he forgot about the challenge and just enjoyed the pure joy of skating on perfect ice. Behind him, the other students struggled on, but Jake was already thinking about what lay ahead and how he might be able to help his fellow students when the time came. As Jake skated deeper into the maze, the challenges became more severe. The temperature dropped to -50 degrees. Ice storms came more frequently, lasting longer and blowing harder. The walls shifted every few minutes, changing familiar passages into dead ends and creating new routes that led nowhere. But Jake found that each new challenge played to his strengths. When ice storms hit, he used his low center of gravity to stay stable, while other students were knocked down by the wind. When walls shifted, his mobility let him quickly explore new paths while others struggled to change direction in their heavy equipment. The monitoring room buzzed with excitement as faculty members watched Jake's progress. He was now 30 minutes ahead of the next closest student and moving faster than anyone had ever moved through the maze. "His movement patterns are unlike anything in our database," Dr. Velius reported. "He's using the ice surface itself as a tool." Professor Kexthai nodded slowly. "We designed this maze to challenge the best technology our species could create. We never considered that evolution might have already created the perfect solution." Meanwhile, the other students faced serious problems. The Graxon team's heating suits were working too well. The massive energy output was melting the ice around them, creating pools of water that froze their feet in place. They had to use emergency power to break free, draining their batteries faster than expected. Colthex activated his communicator. "Base, this is Graxon team. We are experiencing equipment complications. Request permission to withdraw." "Denied," came the reply. "You have 3 hours remaining. Continue or activate emergency beacon." The Veltari twins faced different but equally serious issues. Their crystal energy fields were creating too much moisture in the air. Ice was forming on their bodies faster than the crystals could melt it. Silandra was moving like a statue, covered in a shell of frozen water. "Sister, we must find shelter," Nelvera said, her voice shaking with cold. But shelter was hard to find in the maze. The walls provided no protection from the storms, and stopping to rest meant falling further behind in the race against time. Vexton was having the worst problems of all. His advanced suit had been designed for the controlled environment of his home world. The extreme cold was causing system failures. His navigation equipment had stopped working. His climate control was struggling to keep up with the dropping temperature. Then disaster struck. Vexton reached a section where the floor was covered in a thin layer of ice over a deep crack. His heavy suit broke through, and he fell into a crevice up to his waist. The impact damaged his heating system, and freezing air rushed into his suit. "Emergency," Vexton called on his communicator. "I am trapped and losing heat rapidly. Systems failing." In the monitoring room, rescue teams prepared to enter the maze. But they would need at least 30 minutes to reach Vexton's position, and his suit readings showed he might not last that long. Jake heard the emergency call on his own communicator. He was only 15 minutes away from Vexton's position, and moving fast. Without hesitation, he changed direction and skated toward the trapped student. Jake found Vexton half frozen and barely conscious. Ice had formed inside his suit, and his cybernetic parts were shutting down to preserve power. The Zephyrian was too heavy for Jake to lift, but the human had an idea. Jake looked around and found pieces of ice and metal debris scattered by the shifting walls. Working quickly, he broke off flat pieces of ice and used his skate blade to shape them. Then he tied them together with cord from his backpack, creating a makeshift sled. "Vexton, can you hear me?" Jake asked. The alien's electronic voice was weak and distorted. "Human Jake? Why are you here? You should be racing for the center." "Nobody gets left behind," Jake replied. "I'm going to get you out of here." Jake carefully pulled Vexton from the crevice and onto the ice sled. The Zephyrian weighed almost twice as much as Jake, but the smooth ice made pulling the sled possible. Jake began skating toward the exit, pulling his rescued classmate behind him. The extra weight slowed Jake down, but his skating skills let him maintain speed even while pulling a heavy load. He used downhill slopes to build momentum and banked around corners to maintain his pace. Other students who saw Jake pulling Vexton to safety couldn't believe their eyes. The human had been winning the race, but he had given up his advantage to help a competitor. "This makes no sense," Morgan said to his partner. "Why would he sacrifice his victory?" Colthex, who was struggling with his own equipment problems, watched Jake disappear around a corner. "Perhaps humans value different things than we do." Jake delivered Vexton to a medical team at one of the maze's emergency stations. The Zephyrian would survive, though his suit was completely ruined. As the medical team took over, Vexton grabbed Jake's arm with one working hand. "You saved my life," he said through his electronic voice box. "I will not forget this." Jake nodded and turned back toward the maze. He had lost almost an hour helping Vexton, and other students had moved ahead of him, but he felt no regret about his choice. As he skated back into the labyrinth, Jake noticed something had changed. The maze seemed easier now, as if helping Vexton had given him new confidence. He moved faster than before, taking risks he wouldn't have attempted earlier. Lisa's voice crackled over his communicator. "Jake, are you okay? I saw you on the monitors helping that Zephyrian student." "I'm fine," Jake replied, ducking under a low-hanging icicle. "How are you doing?" "Struggling, but alive. I'm about 2 hours from the center. The Veltari twins are ahead of me, but they're having problems with ice buildup." Jake checked his position on his simple compass. "I can reach the center in 40 minutes if I push hard, but I'm going to take a detour first." "What? Why?" Jake had seen the Veltari twins on the monitors before he left to help Vexton. They were in trouble, and their pride was keeping them from calling for help. Someone needed to check on them. "Because that's what humans do," Jake said simply. He changed course again, skating toward the twins' last known position. In the monitoring room, Professor Kexthai watched with growing amazement. "He's not trying to win," the professor said quietly. "He's trying to make sure everyone survives." Jake found Silandra and Nelvera huddled together in an alcove, their crystal energy failing and ice covering their bodies like armor. They were conscious but couldn't move. "We are beyond help," Silandra said weakly. "Leave us and finish the race." Jake ignored her words and began breaking the ice off their bodies with his skate blade. He shared his emergency heating packs with them and helped them get their crystals working again. "Why do you help us?" Nelvera asked. "We are your competitors." Jake looked at the two aliens who were slowly warming up and regaining their strength. "Where I come from, we have a saying. We're all in this together. It means when things get tough, we help each other survive." The twins exchanged glances, communicating in their musical language. Then Silandra spoke. "We understand now. Thank you, human Jake." Jake left the twins to recover and finally turned toward the center of the maze. He had lost even more time, but he felt good about his choices. Now it was time to finish what he had started. The center of the labyrinth waited ahead, and Jake skated toward it with renewed determination. Jake skated toward the center of the maze with only 30 minutes left on the clock. The path ahead was the most dangerous yet, with narrow bridges of ice spanning deep cracks and walls that shifted every few seconds. But Jake felt calm and focused. His detours to help other students had taught him something important about the maze. The labyrinth wasn't just testing their ability to survive the cold or navigate obstacles. It was testing their character under pressure. Jake understood now why some students had failed so quickly. They had been so focused on their equipment and their personal success that they forgot to adapt and help others. The final approach to the center required crossing a series of ice bridges that were barely 3 feet wide. Below each bridge was a drop of 50 feet into darkness. Other students would need to crawl across slowly and carefully, but Jake had spent years playing hockey on outdoor rinks where the ice sometimes cracked under his feet. He read the ice like a book, seeing where it was thick and strong and where it was thin and dangerous. Jake skated across the first bridge at full speed, his balance perfect and his confidence absolute. The monitoring cameras captured every moment as he danced across surfaces that would terrify most beings in the galaxy. "Impossible," breathed Dr. Velis in the monitoring room. "Those bridges can barely support a person walking slowly." Professor Kexatai leaned forward, his ancient eyes bright with understanding. "He's not fighting the environment. He's working with it. This is what we've been missing all these years." Jake reached the center chamber with 15 minutes to spare. The crystalline beacon sat on a pedestal in the middle of a circular room, glowing with soft blue light. The walls here were made of clear ice, and Jake could see the entire maze, spread out below him like a frozen city. He picked up the beacon and immediately felt its warmth in his hands, but instead of racing back to the exit, Jake activated his communicator and called the monitoring room. "Professor Kexthai, this is Jake Martinez. I have the beacon, but I'm not leaving yet." "What do you mean, Mr. Martinez?" "You have completed the challenge." Jake looked at his position tracker and saw the locations of other students still struggling in the maze. Lisa was only 20 minutes from the center but moving slowly through a difficult section. 3 other students were lost and running out of time. "I want to help guide the others to safety," Jake said. "Can you patch me through to their communicators?" In the monitoring room, faculty members looked at each other in amazement. No student in the history of the academy had ever made such a request after completing the trial. "Mr. Martinez, Professor," Kexthai said slowly, "you are under no obligation to help other students. You have won the challenge." "Winning isn't just about being first," Jake replied. "It's about making sure everyone makes it home." Professor Kexthai was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke with something that sounded like pride in his voice. "Communication channels are now open. Coordinate with the other students as you see fit." Jake spent the next hour guiding his classmates through the maze. He used his knowledge of the shifting walls and dangerous passages to direct them along safer routes. When Lisa got lost in an ice storm, Jake talked her through navigation techniques his father had taught him during blizzards in Minnesota. "Listen to the wind," he told her over the communicator. "It echoes differently off dead ends than it does off open passages. Follow the sound." Lisa followed his instructions and found her way through the storm. "How did you know that would work?" "My dad taught me when I was 8, Jake said. He said nature always gives you clues if you know how to listen. Jake also helped coordinate rescue efforts for students whose equipment had failed completely. He directed rescue teams to their locations and advised them on the safest routes through the shifting maze. By the time the 4-hour limit was reached, Jake had helped guide 6 students to safety and assisted in the rescue of 4 others. What should have been a competition had become a rescue mission, with Jake serving as the coordinator. When the trial officially ended, students and faculty gathered in the main hall. Many of the alien students looked at Jake with expressions he had never seen before: respect, gratitude, and something that might have been awe. Vexton, now recovered and wearing borrowed clothes, approached Jake first. "Human Jake, I owe you my life. If there is ever anything my people can do for you, you need only ask." The Veltari twins bowed deeply, a gesture of great respect in their culture. "You showed us the true meaning of strength." Silandra said. We were wrong to judge humans as weak. Even the proud Graxan warriors Colthex and Morgan came forward. You fight like a warrior, Colthex said, but you care like a healer. This is a combination we have never seen. Professor Kexatai stepped onto the raised platform and called for attention. The hall fell silent as the ancient teacher prepared to speak. In 300 years of conducting this trial, he began, we have seen many students demonstrate technological mastery, physical prowess, and individual determination. But today, we witnessed something far more valuable. The professor's glowing eyes found Jake in the crowd. Mr. Martinez, you completed the trial in record time, but that is not why we will remember this day. You showed us that true strength comes not from superior equipment or advanced technology, but from the wisdom to work with your environment and the compassion to help others succeed. Applause filled the hall, but Professor Kextai raised his hand for silence. The human species has been underestimated by the galactic community. We assumed that technological advancement was the only measure of a civilization's worth. Mr. Martinez has proven us wrong. Jake felt his face grow warm with embarrassment, but the professor wasn't finished. From this day forward, the frozen labyrinth of trials will include a new component. Students will be evaluated not only on their individual performance, but on their willingness to assist others in need. We call this the Martinez Protocol. The hall erupted in cheers and applause. Jake looked around at his classmates and saw genuine friendship in their eyes. He had come to the academy as an outsider from a primitive world, but he was leaving as a respected member of the galactic community. Later that evening, Jake sat in the recreation center teaching basic ice skating to a group of volunteer students. Vexton was there, wearing borrowed skates and falling down every few seconds. The Veltari twins glided gracefully but slowly, their natural balance serving them well. Even the Graxan warriors tried, though their heavy builds made skating difficult. Lisa skated up beside Jake and watched the chaotic but joyful scene. You know what the best part of all this is? She said. What's that? You didn't just show them that humans are tough, you showed them that humans care about each other. That might be even more important. Jake smiled as he watched Vexton finally manage to skate 10 feet without falling. My dad always said that how you treat people when things get hard shows who you really are. Sounds like a smart man. Yeah, he was. I think he would have liked this. As the evening continued, Jake realized that the trial had changed him as much as it had changed how others saw humanity. He had come to Zenith Academy to learn about alien technology and cultures. Instead, he had learned that the best parts of being human, the willingness to help others, the ability to adapt and overcome, and the understanding that true victory means everyone succeeds, were gifts worth sharing with the galaxy. The frozen labyrinth of trials would continue to challenge students for centuries to come, but now it would also teach them something new, that sometimes the most advanced solution is the most human one.